My name is Rachel Grant. I'm 40 single, and for most of my life I have lived for everyone but myself, especially after our parents died far too young and left me raising my younger siblings with a teacher's salary, endless overtime, summer classes, weekend tutoring, and a quiet promise to never complain until every saved dollar finally became this small house in the peaceful suburbs outside Houston, the first place I could truly call my own. And tonight was meant to be the beginning of something better. A simple housewarming party where family, coworkers, and neighbors filled the living room with laughter music, clinking glasses, and the smoky scent of barbecue drifting in from the backyard under the warm Texas evening sky. When my sister Amber approached me, holding a thick slice of cake, smiling wider than usual too carefully, and said softly, "Eat up, sis. I made this just for you," while her eyes followed my hands instead of my face, watching every movement as I reached for the fork. And in that quiet second, something in my chest tightened, because her smile never reached her eyes, and the way she leaned closer felt less like affection and more like anticipation. A look I had seen before in moments when she wanted something badly, only never this sharp, never this patient. So I pretended to smooth the hem of my dress bent down slightly, and in one effortless motion switched our plates, letting the noise and laughter around us hide everything. And when I straightened up, no one had noticed, not even Amber, who only flicked her eyes down once before forcing her smile back into place, and I calmly took a small bite from the new plate, tasting nothing but ordinary, harmless cake, sweet and soft. Exactly what it should have been. Until a few minutes later, Amber lifted her fork and took a bite from the slice I had handed her, and what followed unraveled faster than I could have imagined. First, the faint tremor in her fingers, then the sharp clatter of metal against porcelain, her skin draining of color as she pressed a trembling hand to her stomach, swallowing hard, trying to speak, but the words collapsing into broken, slurred sounds, her eyes darting around the room in confusion before she sank into the nearest chair, breathing fast, shallow as if her body no longer obeyed her. And the laughter died instantly as people rushed over Anthony, dropping to his knees beside her. His voice tight and shaking as he called her name again and again, while she could only answer with a weak, garbled sound. Until within minutes he helped her out the door, insisting she must have eaten something bad and needed to go home. And just like that, the celebration ended. Guests leaving in hushed whispers and worried glances, while I stood alone in the doorway watching their car disappear down the street, still holding the plate in my hand, already knowing that this night was only the beginning, and that once I started putting the pieces together, nothing in my family would ever look the same again. So if you want to know what I discovered next, hit subscribe and turn on notifications, because what comes after this will change everything. After the last car pulled away and the street fell silent, I turned back inside and closed the door behind me. The house felt suddenly too quiet, the kind of quiet that presses against your ears. I went straight to the kitchen, stacked the plates, and started rinsing them under hot water, anything to keep my hands busy while my mind raced. Amber's reaction kept replaying: the trembling fork, the pale face, the way she clutched her stomach and sank into the chair without a sound. It wasn't dramatic collapse or vomiting. It was controlled just enough to alarm everyone and end the evening fast. Anthony had jumped in immediately, voice tight, insisting it was bad food and rushing her out. No one pushed back. Why would they? I dried a glass and placed it on the rack. My thoughts shifted to the past few months. Amber had started asking about my doctor visits more often, not the usual sisterly check-ins, but pointed ones. "Do you see your doctor regularly? Has he said anything about blood pressure or stress levels?" I answered without thinking, assuming it was care. Then I remembered a Saturday last spring. She showed up alone, sat at this kitchen table, glanced around the empty rooms, and said quietly, "You live by yourself like this. If you ever get too tired, I can help manage everything for you. Finances, paperwork, whatever you need. Don't worry, sis." Her tone had been soft, almost protective. I had smiled and changed the subject. It sounded like the big sister I had always looked out for, responsible, thoughtful. Tonight those words landed differently. Help manage everything. I finished wiping the counter and walked into the small office off the living room. The filing cabinet stood against the wall untouched since I started working full-time at 20. I opened the bottom drawer and flipped through folders until my fingers stopped on a thin one labeled in my own handwriting, Amber, POA. I pulled it out. The document was dated 3 years earlier. A durable power of attorney. I remembered the day she brought it. She said the bank recommended everyone have one just in case. I had been exhausted after a long week, trusted her completely, and signed where the sticky note pointed. I hadn't read the fine print. Now I did. The language was cold and exact. If any physician declared that I was incapable of managing my own affairs, medical or financial, Amber would gain immediate and total control over my bank accounts, investments, property, medical decisions, and even where I lived. No expiration date, no requirement for a second opinion. One doctor's note would activate it all. My chest tightened, not panic, but sharp recognition. I set the folder on the desk and sat down. The house was silent, except for the faint ticking of the wall clock. I thought again about Amber's eyes locked on my plate, about how quickly Anthony had gotten her out the door. She hadn't expected the switch. That much was obvious. I stood and walked to the window, staring at the dark street. Tomorrow, I would call Timothy Walsh, the attorney who handled my home closing. I needed real answers, not guesses. For the first time since I bought this house, it didn't feel like just a home. It felt like something I had to defend. But what if she'd already used it without me knowing? The sunlight streamed through the kitchen window the next morning, bright and unrelenting the way Houston mornings can be, even in winter. I picked up the phone and called Timothy Walsh, the attorney who had handled my home closing 6 months earlier. He was calm, thorough, and never rushed explanations. When he answered, I kept my voice steady. "Timothy, this is Rachel Grant. I need to see you today if possible. I found something in my files last night." He didn't ask unnecessary questions. "Come in at 10. I'll clear the hour for you." I arrived early. The office smelled faintly of coffee and fresh paper. Timothy greeted me at the door, silver hair, neatly combed, glasses resting properly on his nose. He led me into the conference room and closed the door. I placed the manila folder on the table. "This is a power of attorney Amber had me sign 3 years ago. She said it was standard just in case I got stressed from work." I didn't read it carefully. Timothy opened the folder and went through the pages slowly. His expression stayed neutral, but I saw a slight tightening around his eyes. He adjusted his glasses twice. "This is a durable general power of attorney," he said finally. "It gives Amber immediate control over your finances, property, medical decisions, and even where you live if any physician determines you lack capacity. There are no safeguards, no court approval, no second opinions. One doctor's note activates it." The air seemed to leave the room. "I signed it because she's my sister. She said it was to protect me." Timothy nodded once. "Many people sign documents like this thinking exactly that. But unfortunately, this doesn't provide protection, it provides control. If someone wanted to use it against you, they absolutely could." I stared at my signature on the last page, slightly rushed, slightly slanted. I remembered Amber sliding the papers across the kitchen table with a reassuring smile. "Just sign here, sis. It's nothing big." Now that memory felt calculated. Timothy closed the folder. "Do you feel incapable of managing your own life right now?" I met his eyes. "I drove here myself. I balanced my accounts yesterday. I bought this house without anyone's help. I'm 40 years old, and I've handled my finances since I was 20. A small smile crossed his face. "Then we can revoke this today. I'll draft the revocation immediately. We can also discuss creating a new power of attorney, someone you actually trust, or a living trust to protect your assets going forward." I didn't hesitate. "Revoke it. And I want Cody named as my successor if anything ever happens to me." "Not Amber." Timothy made a note. "Understood. We'll make it specific and ironclad." We spent the next 40 minutes reviewing every line. He read it aloud, paused for my questions, let me read it myself again. There was no rushing. When I signed the revocation, my hand was steady. By the time I left the office, the sun was high. I felt lighter, but a cold realization still sat in my chest. Amber hadn't just offered to help. She had built a way to take everything if she ever decided I was incapable. I drove home slowly, windows down, letting the warm Houston air clear my head. From the outside, the house looked the same quiet, solid mine. But inside, everything had changed. I parked in the driveway and sat there for a moment. The folder lay on the passenger seat. I picked it up, carried it inside, and set it on the kitchen counter. The phone rang as I walked through the door. It was Rebecca, my best friend since college. I answered on speaker while I poured a glass of water. Rachel, I just heard about last night from one of the neighbors. Are you okay? I told her everything. The POA, the revocation, the growing suspicion about Amber. She listened in silence. When I finished, her voice came back sharp with worry. Rachel. I've overheard Amber say things before. At a barbecue last summer, she bragged to someone on the phone. Rachel's savings will be ours soon enough. I thought it was just talk. But now, check your bank accounts. Right now. If she has that kind of access, she might have already started moving money. My stomach dropped. You think she's already used it? Rebecca paused. I don't know, but you need to find out before she does anything else. I hung up, heart pounding. The bank statements might reveal more than I could handle. A few days later, I walked into the local bank branch in Houston mid-morning, the lobby quiet except for the soft hum of the air conditioning and the occasional beep from a teller machine. Jamie Hayes was at her desk near the back, the same banker who had helped me open the account when I transferred funds after the house closing. She looked up as I approached and smiled professionally. Mrs. Grant, good to see you. How can I help today? I sat down and placed the revocation document and a printed copy of the old POA on the desk. I need a full review of my account activity for the last 3 years, and I need to cancel any authorizations tied to this power of attorney. Jamie's expression shifted from polite to focused. She pulled up my account on her screen, typed quickly, then paused. Her eyes scanned the lines. I see the durable power of attorney on file from 3 years ago granted to Amber Moss. It's still active in our system. That document has been revoked, I said. Here's the signed revocation from my attorney. Effective immediately. She took the papers, read the revocation carefully, then nodded. Understood. I'll update the system right now, but before I do, let me pull the history so you can see what's been processed under that authority. She clicked through several screens. I watched her face as numbers and dates scrolled past. After a minute, she leaned back slightly. Since the POA was granted, there have been regular monthly auto transfers to an external account in Amber Moss's name, categorized as family support. The amount has varied slightly, but averages several $1,000s each month. My jaw tightened. Several thousand. Yes, and there are additional one-time withdrawals. Some labeled as emergency cash advances, others as transfers for purchases, furniture store charges, credit card payments, a few debt consolidation transfers, all authorized under the POA signature. I felt a slow burn rise in my chest. I never approved any of those. I never even knew they existed. Jamie met my eyes. They were processed as valid under the power of attorney document we had on file. The signature matched the one on record. I took a slow breath. Cancel every authorization linked to Amber Moss. No more auto transfers. No phone or online changes. Only in-person verification with me present. She nodded without hesitation. I can do that immediately. I'll also flag the account for enhanced security photo ID required for any future changes, even with POA attempts, and I'll generate a full statement printout for the last 36 months so you have documentation. While she printed the stack, I stared at the numbers on her screen. Thousands of dollars. Money I had earned over decades of long hours and careful saving. Money I had used to help Amber when she needed it, car repairs, down payments, short-term loans she always promised to repay. I had never questioned the amounts because I believed family helped family. Now I saw the pattern. The help had gone one way. The transfers had started small, then grew steadily, perfectly timed, with Amber's new furniture, her vacations, her credit card payoffs. Every extra shift I taught, every weekend I spent grading papers instead of resting, had quietly funded her life while I scraped by. Jamie handed me the printed statements in a folder. Everything is updated. No one can access or change anything without your direct presence and ID. If you need to freeze the account completely, we can do that too. Not yet, I said. But thank you, Jamie. This helps more than you know. She gave me a small, understanding nod. I've seen situations like this before. It's good you caught it early. I left the bank with the folder under my arm. The sun was bright outside, the Texas heat already building, but the cold clarity inside me hadn't faded. Amber hadn't just prepared a safety net for me. She had built a bridge to my entire life savings. I got into my car and sat for a minute, keys in my hand. The next call would be to Cody. He needed to know what was happening, and I needed to know if he had seen or heard anything else. But what if this broke him too? 2 weeks later, Cody showed up at my door with a look I hadn't seen on his face since he was a teenager, raw, almost frightened. I opened the door and stepped aside. He walked in without a word, still wearing his jacket, hands shoved deep into his pockets. He didn't sit down right away. He paced once across the living room, then stopped in front of the window, staring out into the yard, as if trying to find the right place to begin. "Sis," he finally said, voice low. "I went to see Amber and Anthony last weekend. I didn't want to go, but I thought I needed to be sure. I needed to know whether I was just imagining things." I gestured toward the sofa. Cody sat on the very edge, knees pressed together, his phone already in his hand. "I brought something," he said. "I didn't mean to record it, but when I heard them talking in the kitchen, I couldn't just walk away." He unlocked the screen and handed the phone to me. "Watch when you're ready." "But sis, I'm sorry I have to show you this." I took the phone. My thumb hovered over the play button. For a moment I almost handed it back. Part of me didn't want to know. Another part already did. I pressed play. The video started shaky. Cody must have propped the phone against something in the hallway. The kitchen door was slightly open, light spilling out. Amber had her back to the camera, sleeves rolled up, leaning against the counter. Anthony stood facing her, arms crossed, voice tight. She switched the plates. Amber got the dose instead. "That's why she got sick right there at the party." Amber's voice came next, sharp and impatient. "Anthony, I still don't feel right. But it wasn't supposed to be me. The dose was only meant to make her look unstable, just long enough to get adult protective services involved. One bad night, one doctor's note, and the POA kicks in." Anthony rubbed his face. "We were so close. But now she's starting to question things. If APS shows up now, they'll see she's fine. We need another way. Something slower. She can't keep living alone forever." Amber turned slightly. Her profile caught in the light. "She trusts Cody more than us. Maybe we can use that. Get Cody to convince her to sign something new." Anthony shook his head. "Cody's too loyal. We have to be careful, but we're not stopping. The house, the savings, they're ours. She's had her share." The audio cut as footsteps came closer. The video ended. I stared at the frozen frame, Amber's face caught mid-sentence, cold and impatient. My hands were shaking so badly the phone slipped a little. I set it down on the coffee table as if it were burning. Cody watched me closely. "Sis, I don't know what to say. I just know I couldn't let them do this to you." I looked up at him, throat tight. "Why did you record it?" "Because I've been watching them for months," Cody said. "After the party, when Amber got sick so fast, I started noticing things. Amber asking about your doctor appointments. Anthony talking about the house like it already belonged to them. I kept telling myself I was being paranoid, but deep down I knew something was wrong. He swallowed. Do you remember when I was little? You worked 2 jobs to buy me books and clothes so I could go to college without worrying about money. You slept on the couch so I could have the bedroom. You never asked me for anything. You just wanted me to have a better life than you. His voice cracked. Amber's different. She's always thought you owe her because you're the older sister, because you had more. But I don't see it that way. I see how you gave up your youth. I can't stand by and watch her take everything you worked so hard to build. I closed my eyes. Memories rushed in. Cody at 10 hugging me after a long shift saying, "You're the best person I know." Amber at 15 asking for money for new clothes, promising to pay it back someday. I had believed them. Now that belief was gone. I opened my eyes. Thank you, Cody, for not turning away, for choosing to stand with me. He reached out and took my hand, gripping it firmly. I didn't choose. I just did what was right. You're my real family, not Amber and Anthony. I squeezed his hand back. The shaking was gone, replaced by something sharper resolve. I'm going to send this video to Timothy. He'll know what to do. And I'm going to protect you too. This house, the savings you deserve to know they'll be safe with someone who actually values them. Cody nodded, eyes shining, but no hesitation in his voice. I don't need anything. I just need you to be safe. We sat in silence for a while. The phone lay between us like a loaded weapon, quiet but ready. For the first time since the housewarming party, I didn't feel alone in this fight. I had proof. I had Cody. And I had the truth about who my family really was. They'll come knocking soon, and I'll be ready. Even now, thinking back, I still catch myself wondering how long someone you love can hide something like this from you. And how many of us carry secrets we never see coming. The weekend after Cody showed me the video, I saw Amber's car pull up in front of the house. From the living room window, I watched her park crookedly, the engine idling for a few seconds before cutting off. Anthony stepped out first, slamming the passenger door hard enough to echo down the quiet street. Amber followed, scanning the yard like she expected trouble. They walked up the path together, faces arranged in forced calm, shoulders rigid with purpose. The doorbell rang twice, sharp and impatient. I waited a beat, then opened the door just wide enough to block the entrance. I didn't step aside. I didn't smile. Amber spoke first, voice oiled and smooth. "Hey sis, we were in the area. Thought we'd drop by and see how you're doing." Anthony gave a tight nod beside her. "Yeah, it's been a while. We missed you." I studied them both. Amber's hands were jammed deep in her pockets, shoulders coiled tight. Anthony's gaze darted past me into the house, searching maybe for signs I was alone, maybe for any crack in my composure. "I'm fine," I said evenly. "But I'm not letting you in." Amber's smile flickered for half a second. "Come on, sis. We're family. Can't we just talk?" I kept my tone level. "I've already talked enough. I revoked the power of attorney. I canceled every transfer and authorization tied to you. And I have proof of what you were planning." Amber's expression shifted in an instant. Eyes narrowed, lips thinned, cheeks flushed red. "Proof? What proof you're making things up?" Anthony took half a step forward, shoulders rising. "Listen, sis. Whatever you think you know, it's a misunderstanding. We were just worried about you." I didn't budge. The video doesn't lie. I heard every word. "Just long enough to get APS involved. She can't keep living alone forever." "You weren't worried. You were planning to make me look incompetent so you could take everything." Amber's voice rose sharply, almost a shout. "That's ridiculous. You can't just accuse us like that. We're your family. You've always acted like you're better than us. The perfect older sister who sacrificed everything. And now you're cutting us off after everything we've been through." Her words hit, but not the way she intended. Years of double shifts, nights going without, so they could have more rushed back. The sting was different now, cleaner, sharper. No guilt remained, only clarity. "I gave you everything I could," I said quietly. "And you used it to build a trap. That ends today." Anthony's jaw clenched so hard the muscle jumped. He glanced at Amber, then back at me, voice dropping low and edged with threat. "You're paranoid. You think you can just lock us out? We'll fight this. We'll tell everyone you're losing it. No one will believe some lonely woman over her own sister. You'll regret this. Amber stepped closer, face flushed, deep red, finger jabbing the air. You have no idea what you've started. We'll make sure everyone knows how ungrateful you are, how you abandoned your family when we needed you. I held their gaze without flinching. The fury rolling off them felt almost tangible, but it no longer reached me. There's nothing left to work out, I said. Don't come here again. Amber opened her mouth to fire back, face twisted with rage, but Anthony grabbed her arm and pulled her back. Let's go, he muttered through clenched teeth. She's not listening. They turned and walked down the path. Amber looked back once, eyes blazing with anger and something close to fear. Anthony kept his head forward, shoulders rigid, steps heavy with a defeat he refused to acknowledge. I closed the door slowly. The click of the lock sounded final, clean, deliberate. I stood in the hallway listening as their car started and pulled away. My heart pounded, but my breathing stayed even. No tears, no shaking, just quiet certainty. I had said what needed to be said. I had shut the door on them literally and completely. For the first time in years, the house felt safe again, but their retaliation came faster than I thought. A few days after the confrontation, a woman I didn't know knocked on my door. It was a Tuesday afternoon. The house was quiet, except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. I looked through the peephole and saw a woman in her 30s, dark blazer, clipboard in hand, lanyard with a state badge. Professional, calm official. I opened the door. Can I help you? Mrs. Rachel Grant? I'm Erin Reed from Adult Protective Services. We received a report about your well-being. May I come in for a quick wellness check? I stepped aside. Of course, please come in. She entered, glancing around with polite neutrality. I led her to the kitchen table and offered tea. She accepted chamomile, plain, no sugar. I poured 2 cups and sat across from her. Erin set her clipboard down. I'll be direct. The report came from a family member. It raised concerns about self-neglect, possible confusion, difficulty managing daily life, and unsafe living conditions. My role is to assess if there's any immediate risk and if support services are needed. I nodded. I understand. Ask whatever you need to ask. She began with routine questions: how I spent my days, whether I took any medications, how I handled bills and appointments, who I spoke to regularly, how I got around town. I answered each one clearly and completely. I drove myself everywhere. I paid bills on time, balanced accounts monthly. I volunteered at the local Houston library twice a week, reading to children and helping with craft sessions. I cooked, cleaned, managed everything myself. No missed meals, no confusion, no isolation. Erin took notes without interrupting. After about 20 minutes, she leaned back slightly. Everything you've described aligns with someone fully independent and capable, but the report was detailed. They mentioned financial vulnerability and possible cognitive decline. I reached for the folder I had prepared on the counter the day before. I anticipated this. Here's documentation that addresses the report directly. She took the folder and opened it methodically. I watched her scan the pages. First, the notarized revocation of the power of attorney signed and dated just days earlier. Then the bank statements showing 3 years of unauthorized monthly auto transfers and one-time withdrawals under Amber's authority. Finally, the USB drive labeled Conversation Amber and Anthony Moss. Erin plugged the USB into her tablet. She inserted earbuds, pressed play, and watched the short clip in silence. Her expression remained professional, but I saw her eyebrows lift slightly midway through. When the video ended, she removed the earbuds and looked at me. This is substantial evidence, she said quietly. Financial exploitation over an extended period, plus an apparent plan to undermine your capacity to trigger legal control. The timing of the report to us immediately after you revoked access suggests retaliation. I nodded once. Exactly. Erin closed the folder. I've handled many cases involving family disputes over assets. Most don't include this level of preparation. Your financial records are meticulous. Your answers today are consistent and coherent. There is no indication of self-neglect, cognitive impairment, or unsafe conditions. In fact, I'd say you're managing exceptionally well given the circumstances. She stood and gathered her things. I'll close this case as unfounded. I'll document the exploitation concerns and refer the matter to the appropriate investigative unit. If you experience further contact attempts or additional reports, call me directly. Here's my direct line. I took the card. Thank you, Erin. I appreciate you coming out personally. She paused at the door. For what it's worth, I've seen adult siblings try to take control many times. It rarely succeeds when the targeted person is as organized and resolute as you are. Keep protecting yourself, Mrs. Grant. I watched her walk to her car and drive away. The street returned to its usual calm. I went back to the kitchen, picked up the folder and placed it back on the counter. The USB was still in my laptop. I ejected it and stored it with the other documents. Amber's last move, calling an outside authority to pressure me, had failed completely. It had only strengthened my position. I made a fresh cup of tea and sat at the table looking out at the yard. The sun was lower now, casting long shadows across the lawn. I no longer felt hunted. I felt secure. Now to lock it all down forever. A few weeks later, I returned to Timothy Walsh's office to finalize the last piece of protection. The meeting was straightforward. We transferred the house and most of my savings into a revocable living trust with Cody named as the primary beneficiary. Timothy drafted clear provisions to cover property taxes, maintenance, and insurance for the next 25 years, ensuring the house would stay secure without becoming just another asset to sell. When I explained it to Cody over dinner that evening, he set his fork down and looked at me for a long moment. "Sis, I don't need anything," he said softly. "I just want you to have peace." I reached across the table and took his hand. "I know. But this house holds the good memories, the ones we made when you were little, when I read you stories after long shifts. I want it to stay with someone who values it as more than money. I want it to be yours." Cody's eyes filled, but he smiled. "I promise I'll keep it as a real home, not an asset, but the place where we were once a family." The consequences for Amber and Anthony unfolded steadily and without mercy. Without the monthly transfers, their finances collapsed. The house they lived in, bought with my savings, had a mortgage they could no longer pay. Notices arrived, then delinquency letters, then foreclosure proceedings. 8 months later, the bank took possession. Amber lost her sales job when the exploitation investigation became public. Colleagues learned through the referral process, and the scandal made her position untenable. Anthony filed for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences and crushing financial strain. They ended up in separate rented apartments on opposite sides of town, alone, cut off from what remained of our family circle. No one reached out to them anymore. The greed that drove them had cost them the house, the marriage, the respect, and every connection they once took for granted. As for me, I began to live again. I enrolled in a watercolor class at the community center on Thursday evenings. The instructor was patient, the other students kind and quiet. I painted the old oak tree in my backyard, the one that had stood there for decades. On canvas, its branches looked stronger, more graceful. I increased my hours at the Houston Library, reading picture books to children on Saturday mornings and helping with craft sessions in the afternoons. I made friends who knew me only as Rachel, the woman who always brought extra cookies to share. The house felt different now, lighter, warmer. Mine in a way it had never been before. One evening, as I sat on the porch with a cup of tea watching the Houston sunset turn the sky soft pink and gold, I thought about the journey, the party, the switched plate, the video, the confrontation, the APS visit, the trust. And Amber. I had raised her like a daughter. I had loved her. I had given her chances I never gave myself. And she had used everyone to take from me. But her greed did what I never could have predicted. It destroyed her. She lost control. She lost the money she depended on. She lost the respect of what remained of our family. She lost her marriage. All because she could not stop reaching for more than she had earned. I didn't feel pity. I felt peace. I had sacrificed my youth to raise Amber and Cody. I worked endless hours, skipped dreams, put their futures before my own. But sacrifice does not mean surrender. It does not mean letting someone take your life just because you once gave them your heart. Real family does not exploit. Real family respects. Real family protects. Sacrifice has limits. You can give everything to family, but that does not give them the right to take your life in return. Boundaries are not betrayal, they are self-respect. Greed destroys the greedy Amber's unchecked desire, cost her everything: power, money, reputation, marriage. Ambition without integrity leads to self-destruction. Family is chosen, not inherited. Blood does not guarantee loyalty. Cody proved that real family stands with you, protects you, honors what you've built. Protect yourself early. Don't wait for betrayal to act. Document everything. Seek legal advice. Revoke access when trust is broken. Your peace is worth more than any relationship. Freedom comes from decisiveness. Cutting off toxic ties is not failure. It is victory. It's how you reclaim your life and make room for genuine love and growth. Live deliberately. Protect what matters, and never apologize for choosing yourself. Sometimes I think about how different things could have been if I'd seen the signs earlier. But maybe that's how we all learn what really matters when it comes to the people we call family. Thank you all for taking the time to watch the video. If you found this story meaningful, don't forget to like, leave a comment, sharing your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any upcoming videos.